Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. I go by My Guru. Not everyone calls me that, but you can because you're cool. I am an event host. I host birthday parties, graduations, baby showers, but I particularly love weddings. Weddings bring out the best in me. So if you have a special event or a special someone you want to celebrate, you need someone to bring the vibe, the ambience, and the elegance. Hello, it's your boy. I'm also a father of two amazing babies, and I'm a husband to the most beautiful, amazing woman in the world. I'm here today to announce to you the creation of my new podcast. It's going to be called Dad Mode, brought to you by Fathercraft. And this is going to be the very first episode. It's going to be in the format of a Q&A, where I sit down and answer questions about the show. And you get to know me and what to expect on the show going forward. So let's get right into it. Well, earlier on when I started hosting events, I had this thing that I would throw to my audience, and I say, hey, after my performance, and the best way you can rate my performance is come up with a name. I'm looking for a new stage name, so I want my audience, to suggest names that I could go with. I had some really cool ones over the years, but the two that stood out that I really particularly liked, the first one was Lord of Hosts, as in you're the Lord of all hosts. But I thought some people were gonna misunderstand it and then think it's kind of blasphemous because like Christians believe Jesus is the Lord of hosts, and when I say Lord of hosts, I mean host as in event host. But if you have to explain your name, then it's probably not the best one, right? So I ended up going with My Guru. Not that I'm a guru that has some wise things to come sit down and say, but I'm just a guru on the mic. So that one was pretty cool. And also I had some ways to play around that one a little. If you see, most of the times when I put that name out there, it's uppercase M, a lowercase I, and an uppercase C. Now that I in the middle, it's a microphone, right? And the M and the C and caps, because sometimes people refer to event hosts as MCs, master of ceremony. So that's how I kind of played around with it, and I thought, yeah, it's for people who get it, and so I kind of stuck with that one, and I've been riding with it ever since. Yeah, so for the show, Dad Mode, basically, the inspiration behind it comes from all over the place. I have always had this idea in the back of my head to have a kind of show. I've had early inspirations from people like Oprah, way back living in Cameroon. I remember particularly watching this episode where she announced support for hurricane relief. And I saw how excited people were and how she was able to transform lives. And it gave me inspiration early on and say, hey, I want to have that kind of impact on people's lives. I want to run a show. Initially, my idea was to create a platform where families get reunited. At the time, I started learning a lot about families that get separated for many different reasons, and this is way before social media. So my idea initially was to have a platform where people could come and talk about their lost loved ones, and maybe wherever they are, that platform would be an avenue for them to reconnect and have this grand family reunion. So that was my original idea. Obviously, there's this famous episode where Oprah gives everyone a car. You get a car, you get a car, you get. It was so inspiring. I remember sitting down with my mom when we were watching that, and I thought, I like that. I want to be able to do that. So that was my really early inspiration. Over time, the concept of the show evolved, different phases, and there was also at some point an idea where I want to be able to have what I would call a camera room in my home, where every member of my family could just come sit there and express themselves. This is coming from my own personal experiences growing up, where sometimes there's a disconnect between the two generations, the parents and the kids. So you want to have a safe environment where you could sit and express yourself and hopefully get your message across when those tapes get reviewed. And so when I became a dad, I thought, hey, I could put all of these different ideas that I've had over the years, put them together and come up with a concept for a show. So this is going to be, the idea is just to create a library of contacts, of information, of just overall thoughts about life and relationships and career and any and every kind of topic that's relevant to forming me as a man, a husband, and also my relationship with my kids, to improve that. And so I thought I would create this library and then put it out there for my kids to reference. Well, the idea of making it into a podcast is it just comes with the times, right? Over time, I have had so many different ideas. You know, you get inspired by so many different people over time, but obviously to be able to put a show to the level of some of the people that I got my early inspiration from is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge task. It's going to take a lot of resources, which obviously I don't have starting off. So I thought a podcast would be some kind of a low budget way to be able to reach so many different people and create a platform from a small space. And if your message is very impactful, then you could grow from there. I kind of delayed getting this started for so many different reasons. Part of them being resources, of course, like I talked about earlier. But I had looked at the landscape, the social media landscape, as it has been over the last couple of years. Is I've come to understand that the currency of social media is controversy and extreme thoughts. You know, people come on social media to say really outrageous things for shock value. Unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that goes viral, and so I thought that's not me. You know, you'd see a lot of social media experts that would tell you, hey, don't shy away from saying controversial things. That's what goes viral. And rightfully so. Those are the kinds of things that go viral. But also some of them would tell you, be authentic, be your real self. So I thought, if my real self is not somebody who would say outrageous things, then I wouldn't want to transform who I am just for likes and clicks. You know, I want to create real impact. And so there was so many people, my wife in particular, and so many people that are really close to me that kept encouraging me and say, hey, you have something really, really special to share with the world. Go ahead and do that and just be yourself. And the people who identify with it are going to rock with you, you know. So I got onto it, thankfully. Well, obviously, becoming a father kind of got me into thinking about it, getting the show started. And it was a really special moment. It's really, I mean, obviously everyone that has their first kid, it's a special moment for everyone, right? But what is particularly unique about my situation was that my son, the first guy that was born that made me a father, actually arrived on Father's Day in 2020. So that was June 21st of 2020. And he was actually a week early from his due date. There's this video where when my wife was pregnant, about 2 weeks to her due date, because I usually have this moments where I just come down to her stomach and speak to my kid from the womb, you know. So I just talked to him and I say, hey, I've heard that some kids come earlier than their due date. Wouldn't it be cool if you came a week early and gave me a special surprise on Father's Day? Now, keep in mind, kids could come early at any time. It could be days, it could be, but to have a kid actually, I felt like he heard me in that moment, you know. And on Father's Day at about 4 a.m., my wife started having contractions. And as a rookie, first-time parents, we immediately rushed to the hospital. And then we were told we have to go back home because she hadn't properly dilated. It had to be several hours before we could come back. And I remember going back home that early morning feeling, oh my goodness, he's not going to come on Father's Day. This was going to be perfect, you know. And as fate would have it, after a few hours being at home, my wife started dilating to a point where she was like, hey, we got to get back to the hospital. And then I listened to her and we went back to the hospital. And as soon as we arrived, it was like 30 minutes later, the baby was there. And so an amazing Father's Day gift. And so I kept coming back to that. Hey, this means something. And that's also part of the reason why I've decided to get onto it, because this year, 2026, is the first time that Father's Day actually coincides with his birthday again. Because as you know, Father's Day is on a Sunday and not necessarily a specific date. And so it coincides for the first time this year. And I thought, I'm not going to let this moment go by. It might be the universe speaking to me. And hopefully it takes off as the way I hope it would. So yeah, that's the story behind it. Yeah, the name suggests that it's going to be about me and my kids, or dad mode and all of that. But it's everything that surrounds how you operate as a dad. So it's everything. It's business, it's politics, even though I'll shy away from politics a little. But faith, if it comes to it, business, career, any and every type of relationship or topic that affects your thought patterns as a man, as a husband, and as a parent, of course. So there's going to be segments where I'll sit down one on one with people who have experienced so many different kinds of things, whether it be people in politics, people in the legal profession, IT, or business professionals, or chefs, or airplane pilots, photographers, any and every expert. I want to be able to sit down and have them share little nuggets on how my audience, but really at the back of my mind is creating a library for my kids where they could say, "Hey, Dad spoke with this person, and they they were able to give this insights, and maybe it could be some kind of contact or reference for them in the future if they need it." But also just throw little nuggets about different career paths or different types of businesses to operate where they could tap from and inspire them to follow a similar path. And putting it out there obviously is going to be the same for my audience, not just my kids, but that's the inspiration behind it. But also people who have really, really impactful stories that they want to share, and maybe it's some traumatic situation they had to deal with, or some really, really amazing experience that they want to share and inspire other people, and help throw little tracks for other people to follow, and so just overall improve their quality of life. Yeah, so the father-child dynamic that I really want to exploit is there is a little uh I would call it a cash 22 type situation where, for example, you have a situation, it's a cruel word out there, right? So as a parent, but more particularly as a dad, your number one instinct is to prepare your kid for this really cruel war. So sometimes you might get tempted to say, "Hey, I'm gonna really, really discipline this kid. I'm gonna be hands on. I'm gonna be hard on them, build character, build discipline." You have all those good intentions because overall you're like, "Hey, I gotta get this kid ready for the world as it is, you know." But at some point, that really nurturing side of you wants to protect. You want to shield them from that word. It's a difficult situation to navigate, but and I also have realized that oftentimes, and I saw this quote somewhere where someone said, someday your kid is going to sit in a room where you're not there, and he's going to talk to total strangers, people you don't know, about their experiences growing up with you as a parent. And what they're going to talk about, it's not going to be your intentions. It's not going to be whether, "Hey, I wanted the best for this kid. I wanted to prepare him for a cruel world." But what they're going to be talking about is how they felt. That's what they're going to remember. And so you want to have a great relationship with your kid when they grow up. At the same time, you want to have them ready for the world as it is. And every generation feels that, but obviously we feel it's getting even crueler. So how do you manage that? I want to speak to people who have been really successful raising kids. And success, I mean, whatever you define it to be, it doesn't necessarily mean your kid grows up to be some really prominent person, but also just have a great relationship with them in your later years. I want to speak with some of those people. I want to speak with psychologists. I want to speak with experts in all these different fields and get their perspectives on how to make that a reality. Obviously, talking about children is a it's a really, really sensitive topic. Sometimes I don't know to what extent, but I might talk about some the relationships with my own parents or my own dad. Um, but also, I'm going to be talking to other people who will be talking about their kids. It's a very, very sensitive topic. So I want people to feel comfortable being vulnerable, because my goal is for every guest that comes on my platform, or anybody who's listening to me wherever they are, to feel like they're being heard. You know, I prepare really diligently for some sit downs that I'm going to be having, or even some of the talking head ones that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to prepare really well to make sure that any message that I'm putting out there is really impactful. So I want someone leaving here feeling, I feel like I was heard. You remember, going back to what I talked about earlier, having a camera room is a safe space where there's no pressure of someone asking you questions or gotcha type questions, but just a space where someone feels comfortable expressing themselves. Even it's like you're ranting into a camera, but knowing how to ask the right questions to make these people comfortable expressing themselves. I want my audience to understand, and also the people that are going to be coming on the show, to understand that it's about truth telling. Obviously, there are some topics that people are not going to feel comfortable talking about, and I can respect that and make them talk about what they feel comfortable talking about, but make it the truth. And be able to come sit on a platform and say, hey, I dealt with this situation with my parent or with my kid, and be able to admit that here's where I was wrong. Be able to take accountability, because it's also important. There might be a kid out there who has a messed up relationship with their parent, and they want to hear a parent say it. Especially for people that come from my background, it's hard to see parents, our parents' generation, to have someone come sit on a platform and admit that they were wrong about this or that, And so that's also part of the inspiration, is because I want to be able to document this journey as I learn from experts, as I learn from my own personal research, document this process in real time, so that eventually when my kids grow up, they see how I might have had an opinion at some point early in my life, and that I've changed that opinion because I've grown and I've learned. It's important to see that evolution as it goes. Yeah, I don't particularly intend to intentionally avoid the topic, but like I said earlier, if there are certain things that my guests don't feel comfortable talking about, I would respect that. Uh, but just make them overall feel comfortable talking about anything. My goal, the pressure is on me, to create the kind of platform where people feel free talking in that fashion, talking about any and everything. There's some, especially those topics that people feel like I only talk about in my bedroom. You'll be surprised how many people out there share similar opinions, no matter how ridiculous those opinions are, or the same perspective on the subject. If I could create a safe space where people could feel free expressing themselves, some of those innermost thoughts, to be able to come on a platform and say, hey, I know the camera's on, I know this is going to go out into the world, but I'm going to say what's on my mind, without fear of contrition. So feel comfortable in a word, space or topic you want to talk about. That's really interesting, because as I've been conceiving this show, how I want it to look like, what kind of format it's going to take, I've been thinking a lot about, I'm going to have cameras, the cameras on, and immediately when you have cameras surrounding you, the first instinct you have is to switch into actor mode. You want everything, you feel like everything should be curated, you feel like everything should be choreographed. And so I thought, is it possible that I might come on here and be some kind of super dad to the rest of the world, whereas on the regular, if there were no cameras around, I probably would have lashed out on my kid for doing something wrong, because I know that the cameras are not on, So it gave me a unique perspective on how to view the way I carry myself around my kid. Even if it made me, obviously, as a parent, you have the best intention for your kids, right? You love them, obviously, but sometimes they act up. They're just kids, right? They do ridiculous stuff sometimes, and obviously we did the same when we were kids ourselves. So just made me think about, just assume that there was a camera following you around every time. Would you have acted differently? And so it has made me think about it in that perspective, and I think it's going to help me be a better parent when there are no cameras, especially. Yeah. I think about everybody. Everyone either has a kid, or obviously you're a kid to some parent somewhere, and there has been some kind of dynamic. I would assume that in every such relationship, there's ups and downs, however which way you feel about your parents, or whatever your philosophy is about being parents. Obviously, as a kid, you grow up just identifying all the things that your parents are doing wrong. And I don't know what it is about kids, but sometimes you just feel like, and it's not just about kids. I've realized that sometimes people feel better when they're a victim in the story. And I think it's a character trait that lives on with you from childhood to even adulthood. And sometimes it's hard for people to actually take accountability and say, dad did this or punished me in this way or had to discipline me in this way because I did something wrong. But uh, to be able to grow up as a child and be able to take accountability is something really important. But also, um, if you are listening to the show or you're a guest on the show, I imagine someone who's able to listen and hear a parent say, I did this thing wrong, or here's how I wish I dealt with this situation with my kids. And so, as a listener, hopefully it makes you feel some kind of relief, but also make you inspired to say, maybe I was looking at this situation with my parents wrong, or maybe I'm dealing with this situation with my kids wrong, and just overall try to improve and be better. Just make it a better word. There's some really amazing people. I'm from Cameroon, so there's some really inspiring stories that I want to put on the forefront, and not just Cameroonians, obviously, Africans, or even people from all parts of the world. There are parents everywhere, and people have kids everywhere. So I picture uh, talking to some of these, whether they're thought leaders, whether they're business leaders, whether they're leaders in sports and athletics. I'm from Cameroon, so I know Joel Embiid, Baamute, some of those people that set the trail for Pascal Siakam, Francis Ngannou, Samuel Eto'o. These are global superstars that come from my country, and people from other countries as well. Musical artists from Nigeria, movie industry pioneers, or they are really amazing people from my background that I look forward to speak to. Um, but I'm just gonna I'm just gonna aim for the stars and name drop LeBron James, because I know he's far fetched, but I have a very unique. I don't think it's unique. I think it's for everyone to see. This guy has a really really special story coming up from where he came from, this really really disadvantaged circumstances, to have a spotlight on him so young. I mean, you know all the things about him, regardless of what you think about his game, or sometimes what he says on politics. It doesn't even matter. It is without a doubt one of the most inspirational stories that you would hear. Not just that he was able to live and even surpass the expectations that came on him at a very young age. You have to keep that in mind. But he surpassed it, like I said, but he did that without any blemish on his record. You would never hear some kind of scandal that he was involved in. And I talk about him in particular because, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have similar stories, but his is so big that a lot of people can really look up to. The fact that he grew up without a dad, and this is something he has talked about many times, so hopefully I'm not out of bounds with this, but he has grown up without a father. And so he took up the challenge to say, I'm going to be a better father. I'm going to be a great husband. To see how he's been able to raise his family, go through the pressures of the spotlight, and do it so gracefully. It's something to behold. And there's always a temptation as a kid when you're growing up. You look at your parents and you say, I wish my dad treated me this way and that way. You're always looking at it from your perspective. And so there's always a temptation where you feel like that pressure of becoming better parents to your kids, as your parents were to you, might make you try to overcompensate. Maybe you just pamper the kids a little too much, and so you end up spoiling them. There's always that risk. But to be able to balance that, have a great relationship with them, get to build a good moral character in them, and be able to raise great men and women, it's really remarkable. And I think he's the face of that. And so imagine that someday me and LeBron James sitting down to talk about parenting. The closest I ever got to see him was just one time. I was able to get some tickets. My wife and I were celebrating our anniversary. We lived in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time, so we went down to Charlotte to see a game, Lakers versus Charlotte. And we got to the game, and while we're at the arena, we just got information that he was going to play. It was heartbreaking, but it was also great just seeing him up close. And so that's the closest I've ever gotten. So imagine me actually sitting down someday having a one-on-one conversation with the LeBron James about fatherhood. It would be amazing. So where I see dad mode going beyond the first season and subsequently is I want to be able to get to the point where I'm doing town halls where I have family members sit down on a platform and go back and forth about their perspective on how they feel about their relationship with their parents, and and town halls of just bringing people together, even business leaders, people come together and share opinions or inside information on how to break through in their different industries. uh, uh, yeah, I see it going really global. I see it becoming the reference show for anything parent or career or business or the like. So I know that sounds really ambitious, but yeah, I'm a very ambitious guy. Yeah, this is a tough one. Here's the thing. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a pandemic. I call it a pandemic out there, um, where parents and their kids are falling off, getting to a breaking point where they don't even talk to each other. They cut each other off. And depending on who you speak to, who you want to listen to, obviously you listen to one person, they're gonna say it's the other person's fault. This is what they didn't get, or this. But it's on an astronomical rise, and I that's why I call it a pandemic. So part of this is like I said, being able to offer different perspectives on parenting that can offer uh, some kind of lifeline to someone who's dealing with a situation like that, to say, how can I think about this thing differently? You know, my kids are really young now. Hopefully, they grow up having a great relationship with me and my wife. Obviously, that's the goal. So I'm just gonna speak to the older generation, the generation of our parents, to say, if you're dealing with a situation like that with your child, I want to speak as a child, because, like I said, my kids are still very young. I'm gonna hopefully hear from them when they grow older. But so I want to speak to parents, especially parents from my background, Africa. We know that our parents, if you ever get them to apologize, then that's the day. But I want to say this, it's really serious. If you have gotten to a point where your kid doesn't speak to you anymore, I want you to know that they've tried. They've tried every which way. Kids will always make an excuse. They will make an excuse to strangers, people who look at their parents as the absolute worst. They're still going to make an excuse for why they want to have a great relationship with you, why they want to love you, why they think you're the best parent. By default, that's how kids are. That's why sometimes, even with young kids, when you discipline them, even when you discipline them really hard, they're always going to turn around and come back to you and want you to hug them. And so I want you to know that if you're in a situation like that, this kid has tried. They've tried to reach out to you. They've tried to communicate with you in all the different ways that is possible. And there is a possibility that if they get to cut you off, it's just because it's a coping mechanism for them. It's like, instead of me just lashing out and talking to you in a very, very disrespectful way, I'd rather just stay in my lane and just keep my peace. I guarantee you they're not comfortable with that either. But if they've gotten to that point, it's like, I'm just trying to survive. And so it is my hope that if you're sitting there listening to this and you're a parent in that situation, try to listen to them. Try to think about one of the many, many conversations they've tried to have with you on that topic, and give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, what if they're right? Let me just think about it from their perspective and see if you could move one step closer to making this relationship better. I think if we do that, for us as parents right now in this generation, if we keep that consciousness, if we're conscious of that, hopefully we keep that in mind the way we deal with our kids every day, and just ultimately, if you as young parents, if you give your kids less of a hard time than your parents gave you, and hopefully they do give their own kids less of a hard time than you gave them, just continue to reduce this likelihood and just bridge the gap and make families a lot better. Me personally, on my own journey, I have thought I have to figure out different ways of improving myself personally to be there for my kids. Earlier there was a question of what unique moment made you feel like you want to do this. I got to a point where there's this video I saw where someone said, every parent claims that they can die for their kid. But how about you just live for your kid? How many people could do that? And it's such a powerful statement because it makes you start asking, what does living for your kid entail? It entails you being more intentional as a parent. It entails you improving yourself. In my case in particular, it's weight loss, and my general health is something that I've been neglecting for a while. And so I was like, hey, you got to get to losing weight. You got to get to building your overall health, mental and physical. You have to work out. I started working out. I started fasting, dieting. I cut some stuff out and try to improve my own physical health. Not just that, but also my mental health. If I need to get therapy, I have to get that, because we have to break this cycle of transferring trauma from our relationships with our parents onto our kids, because it happens sometimes even in ways that you don't recognize. Sometimes you lash out at the kid when you could have just handled the situation a lot better. Maybe the kid was having a bad day themselves. Just be a bit more empathetic, be a bit more conscious as a parent. I took on that challenge personally, and so that's part of why I started this, so that I can document how I make mistakes as a parent, how I grow, and how I read and learn and do research and talk to professionals, and just make myself overall a better parent for my kid. Hopefully inspires them to become better parents, and also maybe to see how my relationship with me as a husband to my wife make them also better partners to their own families going forward. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. My hope is that my audience will find a lot of this stuff that we talk about relatable. And so I invite all of you to join the movement, follow us on all social media platforms, interact with our content, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. I guarantee you that I'm going to bring really, really high quality conversations and make it worth your while, and that you get some value out of it at the end of the day. And as I close out, always remember, choose kindness.